Again, guys, this is our Unit 4 review. So, let's get through this. You guys know these are giant things to get through. We have shopping, clothing, colors, a little bit of like seasons and when you should wear stuff in this chapter. So, this is on page 213. I recommend you follow along. I know it's hard to look on through here, and I might not go in the order you think. So, we have first section, talk about shopping. We have a few places that you can mention, like a store or a mall. So el centro comercial, the shopping mall, the shopping center. You also have the word for tienda or store at the end. But you have a question. ¿Cuánto cuesta or cuánto cuestan? Letter N, hopefully you remember in like the gusta versus gustan section, it just means plural. So cuánto cuesta is how much does it cost? Like cuánto cuesta la camisa? How much does that shirt cost? Cuánto cuestan would be multiples, like cuánto cuestan los zapatos, because shoes come in pairs. The answer for that question would be either cuesta, if it's one thing that you're asking for, or cuestan, if it's multiple things you're asking for. So cuesta $8, right? Whatever the price is. Or cuestan $22. They cost $22. We also have the word for dinero. That just means money. It's not dollars. It's just money. Any type of money. If it's euros, if it's dollars, if it's pesos, if it's cents. But then you have the specifics. El dólar would be a dollar. El euro would be the euro, European money, which is what they use in Spain. Ir de compras. Ir, if you remember, was a verb, and it meant to go. It looked like an ending to a verb, but it's actually a full word by itself. So ir de compras is to go, which means if I go shopping, I would say yo voy. If you remember that chart, the V chart, it was voy, vas, va, vamos, vais for Spain, and van for a lot of people in kind of the whole world. So ir de compras, to go shopping. Pagar, it's a verb. You should know why. Means to pay. Precio, just the word for price. So like the price of something, the price tag. And then at the end, that which I mentioned. I'm going to go down this way and then I'll do the second side. So describe clothing. Here you have the different clothing items that we've talked about. La blusa, which is just a blouse. A blouse, think of it as like a dressy or shirt. So it's not a t-shirt. It doesn't have like the pockets. It's not like a tank top or anything like that. So it's just like a blouse, kind of like what I'm wearing right now. It's just a blouse with nothing really on it, like no pockets, no buttons, no anything else. And I have sleeves on it too. You can kind of tell. So you have la blusa, so like a girl's dress shirt. Los calcetines, socks. La camisa would be a shirt, like a dress shirt for a guy. So that one is like a button down. La camiseta, it has a letter T. That is your hint for it being like a casual t-shirt. So just like we have a shirt and a t-shirt in English, same thing in Spanish. We have a shirt, which is a camisa, and you have a t-shirt, which is a camiseta with a T. We have a chaqueta, a jacket. You have some descriptions, if it's feo, if it's ugly, or if it's fea, if the thing is ugly. So like blusa, because it has an A and it's feminine, I could say la blusa is fea because it's an A. It has an A spelling. Or I could say el zapato es feo. The shoe is ugly. Or los zapatos son feos. Add an S, right? If you ever change something in Spanish from like singular to plural, everything has to be changed. So you just change the spelling of feo based off if it's feminine, masculine, singular, or plural. El gorro, that'd be like a beanie, something warm, not like a baseball hat or anything. Los jeans, easy enough, doesn't change any spelling, it's just denim jeans. Llevar, another verb, make sure you know why, and it's just to wear something. Nuevo or nueva, depending on what you're describing, it can also have S's, right? Zapatos nuevos, new shoes, but it just means new. Pantalones for pants, so like not jeans, but like dress pants, khaki pants, anything that's not a denim fabric. Pantalones cortos, shorts. Ropa, clothing in general, looks like rope, not really it. A sombrero would be a hat, so like something that actually blocks the sun. A vestido, and sombrero doesn't have to be like the sombrero you think of. It just means something that actually blocks. A vestido, or el vestido, and that's just dress. And I know it's odd because you assume vestido, something a girl wears, but it's considered masculine because it's spelled with an L. So just remember, these endings don't deal with gender. They're just categories that words are spelled by. Zapatos I've been using for shoes. Then you have colors. So we have amarillo, and all of these, before I even get into it, have different spellings because, right, my blusa with an A would change the spelling based off the color that it is. So if mine is azul, mine doesn't change, like the color blue does not change spelling. But if it was amarilla, if it was yellow, I'd say amarilla because it's a blusa. Or if my zapato is amarillo, I'd say amarillo because it's an O and zapato has an O. So just know spellings change for that. So you have amarillo, anaranjado, tongue twister, I know. You have azul, which does not change in spelling. It's just azul. Or if it's a lot of things, you'd say azules. That's the only difference. Blanco for white. Marron, you can also say café. It's another way of using the word for brown. Negro, rojo, and verde, which also does not change its spelling. Okay, let's go up to the top. So you had a few phrases with tener. We've been using tener a lot in these last couple chapters. So it still means to have a certain like feeling. Tener calor, to be hot. So if I feel hot, I'd say yo tengo calor. Or tú tienes calor if I think you are hot because you're like sweating somewhere. Tener frío, so yo tengo frío, or tenemos, if all of us tenemos frío. Tener razón, which means to be right, so like to have a good reason for something. Like if I tell you that you can't go to sleep so late or something like that because you have work to do in the morning, you'd say tienes razón, you're right, that's like a good reason. Tener suerte is just to have luck, to be lucky. So, yo tengo suerte? No mucho, not a lot. Then we have seasons, because we talked about clothing. So, la estación or las estaciones is just the season or the seasons, plural. Our seasons are el invierno for the winter, el otoño for the fall/autumn, la primavera, and el verano, 4 seasons. Our miscellaneous words and phrases. We have a lot of verbs. These were where we started something called boot verbs. So I'm hoping that you guys paid attention even though it was like online learning for 4th quarter here. But boot verbs are important because they bring in a whole new step to how you change spellings on verbs. So we have the word durante, which just means during. So like durante el invierno hace frío. During the winter, it's cold. But then these verbs have an IE here because they get an extra step added to their E in the middle of the word. So cerrar, when you change it, even though it's an AR verb, you would say like O for yourself, AS for tú, A for one person, AMOS for nosotros. I won't say vosotros because we don't use it. AN for a lot of people. It's not enough to just take off the AR and put one of those endings. You also need to put the right IE spelling in the word. So here, for example, you would say CIE because you put that letter I there. So it'd be yo cierro, for example. Like yo cierro mi libro, I closed my book. Or yo cierro mi puerta, I closed my door. You would say the same for tú cierras. Or one person, if it's a guy, él cierra. The only difference is they're called boot verbs because this change where you put the new letter I only occurs inside the shape of the boot. So if you were to draw your little chart, you would see, let me see if I can do it through here because I can't do it on that side for you guys. You would see that your chart has the right, or this new spelling, I should say, added only inside the shape of a boot. It doesn't look too much like a boot, but it's easier to explain it that way. In that shape. So if it's a boot verb, the letter I, let me use a different color, is added to these sections. See if I can bring it up, guys. So it's only through here that you're actually going to put that extra letter IE. So this top one would be like cierro, cierras, cierra, and cierran. These two do not get the letter I. And the same thing would happen for all of the rest of the words that are on this list. The empezar, entender, pensar, preferir, querer. So all of that changes. The only reason why I didn't put a different ending on this is because if you notice, we have all 3 versions of the verbs here. You have ARs, ERs, IRs. So some of these are going to have ASs or AMOSs, and some are going to have EMOSs or ESs. It's a lot of different spellings, but just know that you have to add the letter I. And we actually had 3 different types of boot verbs. This one here, and then you had 2 more in the next lesson we're going to do in a second. So keep that in mind. So here is exactly what I was describing. You have the stem changers, you have the boot, like I was mentioning. Here is an ER verb example of it. The one that we were looking at for cerrar was technically an AR verb for understanding it, but you are going to be using this type of boot and just not adding an I, adding something else in the other chapters too. So I hope you guys remember that from last year, because this chapter is important because it kind of leads you on to the rest. Let's see. Direct object pronouns. These are just ways that you can replace like a noun. So we're talking about all these clothing. You don't always say like, I bought the shoes, I wore the shoes, I like the shoes. You might just say like, I bought the shoes, I wore them, I like them. So these are ways that you can replace that thing. So if you're talking about yourself, you're not always going to talk about yourself in like first person and say your name over and over. You say yo or you say me. If you talk about yourself, it could be like, in the I like something, a mí me. It's not like Ms. Monge likes, it's just, I'm talking about myself and I like, me gusta. Same with, if you're talking about a you, I won't constantly say your name, that you like something or you have something, I'll just say te instead. Lo, depending on if it's him, you would say lo, obviously because it's a guy, or if it's a thing, but it's spelled in the masculine. So like for a gorro, right? That's a hat, but it's spelled with an O, so you would replace that its word with this lo as well. And same for la. You can be talking about a girl, you can be talking about an object that has an A. So it could be like a camisa, because it has an A, you would call it a la. For nos, that's just another word for us, or for we technically. You have os for Spain, although we don't use it too often. And then you have los, again, for it could be a lot of guys, or it could be a lot of objects like the zapatos that I talked about. Instead of saying, I like the shoes, I wore the shoes, I just say them. I like the shoes, I wore them. So you would say los in Spanish. And if it's like a bunch of shirts, I would say las. Or if it's girls, right, you would still say las as well. So this is your first lesson in Unit 4. I'm going to skip to the second lesson and we'll continue there. And you're back. Last part of Unit 4, page 237. So this is going over a few more like dinner food items, places that you might go to or visit around town, talking about a restaurant and like the things you'll find there. So it's kind of like an out on the town type of vocab list. So first we'll start with the places that you might come across in town. We have el café. It looks like the word for coffee, kind of is, but also we have cafes, right? So like the actual coffee shop, I guess you could say. We have el centro, which is the center, aka downtown. We just call them downtown instead of the center of town. El cine, which is like a movie theater, or like if you go to the movies, not like a play theater. We have el parque, park, el restaurante, restaurant, and el teatro. That would be the theater, like a play theater. Things that you might go to, so like events happening. El concierto, if it's a concert. Las entradas would be tickets, like what you pay to go to something. La música rock, so any sort of music, you just kind of put the type of music it is instead. La música jazz, ¿verdad? So just the type of music you're describing. La película is just a movie. La ventanilla would be the ticket window, like a ticket booth that you go buy stuff at. Ways you can get around town. Transportation. A pie. I know it looks like pie. It's not pie. A pie, by foot, like if you're walking. La calle, if it's on a certain street. La calle Panama Lane, or La calle California Avenue. El autobús would be the bus if you are using a bus instead. En coche would be car. You can also say en automóvil, which is an automobile. You can say en carro, C-A-R-R-O, which is technically like another word for car. There's a bunch. You can say el vehículo, which is the vehicle. So we're using en coche, but there's a bunch of different ways you can use it. Encontrar, this would be one of the boot verbs. If you notice, we have a few more down here in the miscellaneous, but this is using the same idea from last lesson where you change a second step in it. So it's not just like changing the last two letters for an O or an ES or anything. It's just doing that change, but then also adding something in the middle of the word. So you have a boot verb, encontrar. We'll get to it in a second when we get to some of the others. And tomar, which means to take. So like tomar el autobús, to take the bus. Tomar el coche, take the car somewhere. Okay, then we have in a restaurant. So people, objects, foods that you would find in a restaurant. First, we have el camarero or la camarera. It could be the waiter / server, however you want to call it, but guy or girl, depending on who it is. We also have costar, which means to cost something. And again, if you notice, it's a boot verb. It gives you the hint with the UE. La cuenta would be the bill, like what you ask for in order to figure out how much you owe someone. The postre for dessert. El menú is the menu. La mesa, the table. El plato principal, the main course or the main dish, the main plate. La propina, the tip, which you should be leaving for all your servers. We'll get to verbs last. So for dinner, we have all these foods. El arroz, el bistec, which is like steak. I mean, beef is what you usually use for steak, unless you have like a pork chop or something, which is not called a steak, it's called a pork chop. But bistec is known as beef. That's just like the type of food it is. You can also refer to steak, like an actual steak that you're talking about, as bistec. So you have el bistec or steak. You have broccoli, you have carne. Carne is also, it can mean different things. Like you talk about carne asada, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably heard, and you're thinking of like grilled beef technically. So carne means meat. It just means the word meat, but we use it as kind of a substitute for beef because people automatically think carne asada, and carne asada is like 99% beef when it comes to that. Like when you ask for carne asada, you know you're going to be getting beef. So just know that those two can be confusing because they both mean beef, but then there's like different connotations to it. But just remember here, carne technically means meat. Bistec is the one that technically means steak, even though we use carne asada and we assume beef. Ensalada, salad. Frijoles for beans. Pastel would be cake. Patata is another way of saying potato. So in Spain, they mostly use patata, and this chapter takes place in Spain, which is why they're using that. But we know another way of saying potato. We had papa. If you remember papa fritas, so French fries, you can also use papa here because papa is what like most of the world will use for potatoes. But in Spain, they call it patata, and since we're in Spain in this chapter, they're using patata too. Pescado for fish. Pollo for chicken, which I'm assuming you guys knew, tomate for tomato, and verduras for vegetables. Lastly, we had these verbs. So we're going to go through the boot verbs. I'm going to start on the other words and phrases because we already mentioned the UE spellings. And if you notice, these last two have I's, so they're going to be different. So we have allí, which means there. Like, ¿dónde está la mochila? Where is my backpack? Allí. It's right there. Aquí means here. So, ¿dónde está mi teléfono? Aquí. Like it's right here. El lugar is place. If you notice, I'm skipping the UEs because I said I was doing those last. El lugar is just place. So, ¿dónde está el lugar? Where is this place? Está en California Avenue. En la calle California Avenue. It's on California Avenue, the street. Tal vez means perhaps. So, let's see if I can ask a question for you guys here. Like, ¿quieres ir al restaurante? Do you want to go to the restaurant? Tal vez, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Ver, another verb. It's not a boot verb, it's just a normal verb. And it means to see something. Like ver una película, to see a movie. And then now we actually have the boot verbs. So we had encontrar at the top in that first section. You had costar over here in the restaurant. And now you have almorzar, which means to eat lunch. Dormir, which means to sleep. Poder, which means to be able to. And volver, which is to come back, to return to some place. So all of these are UE boot verbs, which means that they have the same, I'll show you here because this is what they are, the same rule where you change and you add the UE based on where the word / pronoun falls in the boot shape. So for all of these, you would be replacing. This time you're not adding. The last time we did it in that first lesson, you added the letter I. Here, you completely remove the letter O and you replace it with a UE. So that's step 1. Replace UE for all of the pronouns, that need it. So if you remember, not nosotros, not vosotros, but yes for the rest. And then you can go back and do the normal changes. Take off the ER and put the right change based off the person you're talking about. So if you notice, all of these verbs, O, 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 O here, O over there, and O right there. All of these are going to be removed, and you're going to put the UE, as long as it's, sorry, wrong way for the camera, as long as it's in the boot shape for you guys. Then you have the IRs. Okay, so the IRs are here. You have pedir, which means to order or to ask for something, like pedir una agua, ask for a water, or order an hour, or a water. And servir, which is to serve. These are the only 2 I verbs, so this is relatively easy. It's kind of like you need to know these 2 charts, and that's it. So same idea. It's another boot verb. You have the same shape, you have the same rules, except this time you're not removing any O's, you're not adding an extra I, you're completely removing the E and replacing it with an I. So you remove the E's and put I's for all of the ones on the boot shape, and then you change the ending like you normally would for an for an IR verb, and put the O-E-S-E-E-N, except for nosotros and vosotros, because those still have the I's. So these were the 3 boot shapes, one from last year, or lesson 1, and then these 2 from here. This is all the Spanish 1 material that you guys have. So these few videos have been going over pretty much an entire year of Spanish with you guys, which is why it's so quick and kind of long. Still, even though it's like an entire year, it takes about 20 minutes per chapter. You guys are going to be starting new material after this. So we are going to still be using our books. If you notice, we've only gone through half of the book, and then Spanish 2 starts with Unit 5. So we do the second half. So I'll stop you guys here. Next time you guys see me and a video, it will be actually new material for Spanish 2. Remember, if you have any questions, to always reach out. So I'll see you guys in a bit.